What happens when one gospel icon boldly calls out another? Burrell's latest jaw-dropping statement about Juanita Bynum has completely shaken the gospel world, leaving fans, pastors, and followers deeply divided. Some say Kim is simply telling the truth without fear, while others insist she's crossed the line and owe an apology. But what exactly did Kim say that has everyone buzzing? And why does this feud cut much deeper than it appears? Stick around because the details behind this controversy will shock you. When it comes to gospel music, few names hold as much weight or respect as Burrell and Juanita Bynum. Both women are powerful figures, not just as artists, but as spiritual leaders whose voices reach far beyond the church walls. But recently, these two names have been trending for reasons that have nothing to do with new music, a sermon, or even a joint project. Instead, it all started with a statement Burrell made, one that directly involved Juanita Bynum, and it sparked one of the most intense debates the gospel community has seen in years. In this video, we'll unpack everything: what Burrell said, the reasons behind her words, how Juanita Bynum responded, and the explosive wave of reactions flooding in from fans, celebrities, pastors, and critics alike. You'll also get the full background most people are skipping, including the complex history between these two gospel powerhouses that makes this feud so personal. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. By the end, you'll understand why this moment matters, what it exposes about the gospel industry, and how the fallout could permanently change the public's perception of both Burrell and Juanita Bynum. So buckle up, because things are about to get intense. But before diving straight into the drama, it's important to understand who these women are and why their words carry such weight. Once you grasp their influence, you'll see exactly why Burrell's comment hit the way it did. Let's begin with Burrell. For decades, she's been recognized as one of gospel's most technically gifted and innovative vocalists. She's what many call a singer's singer, the type of artist whose voice has not only shaped gospel but inspired mainstream icons too. Legends like Whitney Houston, Beyoncé, and Mariah Carey have openly praised her vocal mastery and artistry. In the gospel world, Burrell isn't just a performer, she's a powerhouse, a mentor, and to some, an unfiltered truth teller who says what others won't dare to. But her career hasn't been without controversy. Kim has often faced backlash for her blunt remarks, sometimes during sermons, sometimes in interviews. Time and time again, she's found herself making headlines not just for her voice, but for her words. That outspoken reputation is exactly why people are either quick to defend her, or equally quick to condemn her whenever she speaks her mind. Now, on the other side, there's Juanita Bynum. Unlike Kim, Juanita's fame doesn't primarily come from her singing, though she has released music. Her greatest recognition comes from her role as a preacher, evangelist, and prophetess. She rose to prominence in the late 1990s and early 2000s, becoming one of the most powerful and influential female figures in Pentecostal and charismatic circles. Her sermons, especially No More Sheets, which became nothing short of a cultural phenomenon, solidified her as a spiritual leader, capable of capturing the hearts of millions. Yet, Juanita hasn't been without controversy. From her very public marriage and divorce to legal battles and criticism over her extravagant lifestyle, she's faced both praise and backlash. Still, despite the highs and lows, her following remains enormous, and her authority within the church world is unquestionable. To many, Juanita Bynum represents far more than just a preacher. She's seen as a living symbol of endurance, divine calling, and fearless spiritual strength. Now picture these two forces: Burrell, the vocal powerhouse known for her fearless truth-telling, and Juanita Bynum, the prophetic leader with millions of loyal supporters, clashing publicly in a feud for everyone to see. These aren't just any gospel figures. They're two monumental voices who built legacies, inspired generations, and dominated stages across the globe. That's why, when Burrell made a statement involving Juanita Bynum, the reaction was instant and explosive. It wasn't merely one artist mentioning another. It was one giant of the gospel world publicly addressing another, and in a close-knit, emotionally charged community like gospel music and church culture, comments like that are guaranteed to rattle cages, spark heated debates, and force people to pick sides. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. This isn't the first time these two names have been tangled in controversy. Their paths have crossed before. And that shared history makes Kim's latest remarks even more jaw-dropping. Which brings us right to the center of it all. What exactly did Kim Burrell say about Juanita Bynum that ignited this firestorm? Now that we've set the scene and understand the power these two women hold, the question remains, what words left the gospel community in an uproar? It all began during a recent public appearance where Kim addressed an audience, a space where she's always seemed most at ease. As we've seen many times before, Kim Burrell isn't one to follow a polished, pre-written script. She's spontaneous, unfiltered, and speaks exactly how she feels in the moment. That same honesty, while admired by many, has also placed her in controversy time and time again. And during this particular event, Kim made a comment that directly referenced Juanita Bynum. Depending on who you ask, it was either a raw, transparent moment or a subtle dig that went too far. She implied that Juanita, despite her public image as a powerful prophetess and woman of God, had areas in her personal life and ministry that didn't quite align with the image she projects on stage. The tone Kim used wasn't casual or lighthearted, there was a sharpness to it. She spoke about inconsistencies in Juanita's life, hinting that what people see under the spotlight may not reflect what happens in private. Some audience members laughed awkwardly, others gasped, and almost immediately, clips from that very moment began circulating all over social media. Now, here's the twist. Kim never explicitly called Juanita a fraud, nor did she make any direct accusations. But the way she crafted her words and the fact that she mentioned Juanita by name was enough to ignite the flames. She hinted that Juanita's influence wasn't always used wisely, suggesting that the public often embraces a carefully curated image rather than the full reality behind it. Would you like me to continue paraphrasing the next part of the script in the same tone and pacing? Just think for a second about how explosive that is. In a world where church leaders and gospel figures are often viewed as untouchable, suggesting that one of the most well-known names in ministry might be presenting an image that isn't entirely genuine, that's a daring move. And coming from Kim Burrell, whose voice holds serious weight in the gospel world, that statement hit in a completely different way. The way she delivered it made all the difference too. Kim's tone was cutting, her timing felt intentional, and her body language showed she knew exactly how powerful her words were. This wasn't some slip-up or casual remark. It was a calculated call-out. Almost instantly, reactions began to pour in. Some of Kim's supporters applauded her bravery, saying, "Finally, someone speaking the truth about Juanita Bynum." Others, however, slammed her, accusing Kim of being jealous, bitter, or simply stirring up drama for attention. Then there were those in the middle, fans and church members who were just stunned to see two such powerful women's names tangled up in controversy once again. What makes all of this even more complicated is that Kim Burrell's statement didn't come out of nowhere. For years, quiet whispers about Juanita Bynum's ministry and personal life have floated through church circles, though most people wouldn't dare speak them out loud. By naming Juanita directly, Kim cracked open a conversation that many had been avoiding for a long time. But here's the twist. What Kim said is only half of the story. The real drama began once Juanita Bynum and her supporters got wind of those comments. Because if there's one thing everyone knows about Juanita, it's that she doesn't stay quiet when her integrity is questioned. And her response? It only threw gasoline on the fire. Anyone who's followed Juanita Bynum over the years knows she's not the type to let attacks on her character slide. Whether she's on the pulpit, speaking in interviews, or posting on social media, Juanita has always been unapologetically bold. It's part of her brand. So when Kim Burrell's remarks started making the rounds online, fans were glued to their screens, waiting to see how Juanita would clap back, and respond she did. Just days after Kim's comments went viral, Juanita went live on Facebook with a passionate, fiery message. Though she didn't call Kim out by name right away, it was crystal clear who she was referring to. She spoke about jealousy and bitterness in the gospel industry, saying that too many people try to build themselves up by tearing others down. Juanita reminded her followers that her ministry had been tested through fire, that her anointing was proven through trials, and that no opinion or rumor could erase the work she's done for God's kingdom. Then, in true Juanita fashion, she turned to scripture, referencing biblical stories of prophets and leaders who faced attacks but were ultimately vindicated by their purpose, and calling it was her way of saying, You can talk all you want, but God's hand on my life speaks louder than gossip. As the live stream went on, though, her tone grew sharper. Juanita shifted from defending herself to indirectly confronting Kim Burrell's remarks. She questioned why, in a time when the gospel industry should be focused on unity and authenticity, some individuals would instead use their platforms to throw stones. Would you like me to continue paraphrasing the next part, Juanita's full reaction, and what happened afterward? In the same tone and rhythm? This question didn't just come out of thin air. Over the years, Juanita Bynum herself has faced heavy criticism for her lavish lifestyle, pricey conferences, and very public personal struggles. At the same time, Kim Burrell has often been accused of using her platform more to confront than to comfort. When you put those two dynamics together, their feud becomes like a magnifying glass, exposing the fractures within an industry that thrives equally on worship and spectacle. But it goes even deeper than that. This controversy also brings into focus a much larger issue: accountability among church leaders. One of the biggest debates sparked by this feud revolves around whether Kim was right or wrong to publicly call out Juanita. Should leaders challenge each other openly for the world to see? Or should those difficult conversations happen quietly behind closed doors? Kim's supporters insist that silence only enables bad behavior. They argue that too often church figures have escaped responsibility for misconduct, or hypocrisy simply because no one was brave enough to confront them publicly. From that point of view, Kim's blunt approach might have been harsh, but it was needed. It was a wake-up call that leaders, no matter how powerful, are not above correction. On the other hand, critics see things differently. They believe that public callouts don't fix problems. They just create more division. To them, Kim's comments weren't about accountability at all. They were about humiliation. They argue that if Kim truly cared about Juanita or the integrity of the church, she would have had that conversation privately instead of turning it into a public spectacle. Then, of course, there's the question of ego and pride. Both Kim Burrell and Juanita Bynum are undeniably talented, influential, and strong-willed women, but with great influence often comes great ego. This entire situation has led people to ask whether gospel leaders sometimes get more caught up in protecting their image than in embracing humility, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Because really, if both women could set aside their pride, imagine the impact they could make together. Instead, all eyes remain fixed on their conflict. The situation has also sparked discussions about how this affects younger generations of believers. Many younger Christians, especially millennials and Gen Z, already approach organized religion with skepticism. They've grown up in the age of social media, where every scandal is magnified and every leader's flaws are broadcast in real time. Watching two major gospel figures feud so publicly might only reinforce the belief that church leaders can be just as dramatic, prideful, and messy as secular celebrities. In other words, the spectacle may actually drive people further away from the church instead of drawing them closer. And finally, we can't ignore the role of social media in all of this. 2 decades ago, a comment like Kim's might have stayed confined to a church or conference room. But today, one smartphone recording can spread across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube in just a few hours. This feud isn't only about what Kim said, it's about how fast those words were shared, dissected, and debated by millions of people, many of whom don't even follow gospel music. The internet transformed one remark into a cultural conversation. At the end of the day, this all leads to one undeniable truth: the Kim Burrell and Juanita Bynum feud isn't just a personal clash. It's a reflection of the gospel industry itself, a space where faith, fame, money, accountability, and ego constantly collide in complex, often chaotic ways. Would you like me to paraphrase the next part, the conclusion and reaction fallout, in the same storytelling tone?